Mark, Tyler, Roma, Chris. We're so happy to be here, and we're really excited to talk with you all.
Uh,
Hi, everyone.
Oh,
Okay, well, first off, thank you everyone for like coming in, and to thank you for like being my first members. I like my first interviewees. I feel like it was a bit messy at first, and you guys have been so patient, and I'm very grateful for that. This is something I wanted to do for a while, and I'm really honored that you guys are my first group, I guess.
I'm honored that you asked me.
no, it's a pleasure to come on and support.
Yeah, it's awesome to hear.
I'm just happy.
You know what? Let's just go right into it. Graduation. What was it like for you? If you had to describe it in one word, what would it be and why?
One word.
Anticlimactic. Maybe.
Yeah.
I would say, anticlimactic, underwhelming.
Yeah.
Very
Definitely. Maybe it was a Brooklyn College thing, but it was definitely a little bit.
I want to say part of it for me was because it was virtual graduation.
Yeah.
There was no like celebration. It was kind of one of those things where it was just like, you finish class and then you just sign off like you finish your last final and like turn it in online, and then like you just sit at your computer and you just, I don't know, look around and you're just like, okay.
Now
like,
what?
Yeah, it's like you don't like celebrate with your classmate, or there's no classmates. I don't know that you can like high five or something. It's just you in your room.
Yeah, I remember at graduation, like when they actually did the stream and everything, I was literally in pajamas. I had just woken up, like I rolled over and I was like, wait, I think that's today. Let me like turn the YouTube link on.
Yep.
Did you guys watch the whole thing?
Nope.
I
No.
did not.
I did
What
not.
killed me, they didn't even use the word that I submitted for like the graduation like caption or whatever.
Wait, what word did you?
Null, right?
Yeah, it was null. I was like, okay, like, I thought it was like some computer bug or something. But damn it. But we'll take it. We'll take it.
You
Why
need
did
to
you
put
say
in
null?
quotation mark.
Why was it null? Why was null the word you wanted to send?
Oh, just like a shout out to my brand. Have fun. Also, just it means nothing. So it's like it looks like someone messed up. So I guess that's why they took it out. But
I'm sure you gave him a computer error.
yeah,
I'm sure somebody in the back was like, what is this?
Yeah, they were probably a little shook. They probably like reacted to it negatively. But in general, like graduation was definitely like, it didn't hit the same way it should have. But that's what happens over the pandemic.
But I don't know if that's an online thing or if graduation in general would have just been like really weird. Like my sister said when she graduated and she graduated in person, that she also felt like really just, not like after 4 years you feel like you would be like ecstatic, but she really wasn't.
Yeah, I feel like what made it interesting for me was that it was like another day where I'm just like on YouTube, just like every other day. But now it was supposed to be like the celebration, and you see different people like posting pictures with like lipstick and looking so pretty, and they're like so proud. And, there's always those LinkedIn comments where they talk about how big of a deal graduation felt like for them. And I felt so disconnected from that reality.
LinkedIn is
Yeah.
fake.
It really is, yeah.
No, I like
I
actually
agree.
ended up putting on like a cap and gown and like going to campus. Like obviously the gates were closed, but I like stood outside and I took pictures and like people honked at me to be like congrats.
Ah,
Didn't you
that
say you
was-
created
that's
a
awesome.
mug?
That's pretty
for
awesome.
that?
Yeah, so then my aunt, like as a present for graduating, I like sent out the photos in the family WhatsApp, of course, right?
Aw.
So she printed them out in a mug. So I literally have a mug and it's like my face.
That's cool. I
Yeah.
love that.
I think like more than celebratory for me, graduation just feels, I don't know, like school is like what I've done for longer than almost anything else. You're so used to semesters, you're so used to like aiming for certain classes and getting your degree, and like success is like so easily defined in school. It's just an A, a 4.0, dean's list, maybe internships. But now it's like, are you just going to work from 9 to 5 forever? Like, is this it? Do I have to define like my own idea of success outside of career? Because you can't just like, I mean, I guess you could be just like focused on career, but the thing with like working in programming is usually you don't, maybe you do, but for me, like most of the times, it's just a project you're given, and you, not always, but it's usually just a project you're given, and sometimes you don't like the language, you don't really choose the people you work with, and you can never like step outside and just sit in the sun like you would at Brooklyn College, you know, like there's a
Yeah.
huge campus, it's always sunny, the buildings are beautiful. So whenever I was stressed out, I would just like go and sit in the grass.
Yeah, you can't cut like a meeting.
Just
you
go
can
to the
cut-
pond was my thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I relate to that for sure. You know, for me graduating, it's like there's like two things. It's like there's the now what aspect that for me at least COVID like amplified like 10x. And then there's the other aspect of just for me at least like that like anxiety of like okay, now is the real world, or you know what are things going to be different, or yeah, am I going to be doing this for the next 30 years or 40 years or what?
Definitely. I mean, at least one thing about graduation, you know, you don't have homework anymore. You don't have like, you know, the dedications to doing work for someone else that's not necessarily going to benefit you. Like it gave you, it's just like, hey, you have free time again. Congrats. That's what it felt like. Yeah.
Man, I kind of hate free time though. Now I'm like alone with my
Crazy.
thoughts.
Don't let the employers hear you say that.
I don't know.
That could be a LinkedIn post right there.
Oh, word.
Free time, yo,
I
1,000 shares.
hate
All the CEOs like, wow, I should hire someone just like you.
I don't know. I like staying busy, I guess. But it's really hard to stay busy when there's nothing like on the line. Like if there's not a grade waiting for you, if a professor didn't give you like an extension. Like I'm very bad at keeping myself accountable. Like I've been trying to work on different projects, and I'll be good for like maybe a solid week, and then it's gone. There's no like structure. There's no like. It's really hard to stay focused and motivated.
Yeah, no, for sure. The amount of half like finished projects I have like lying around is kind of ridiculous.
I think for me, it's just been like finding what's interesting and like what really makes you get hype when you finish something, and that's usually what it is. Like if you start something and it's not necessarily like something that makes you happy, you're not really gonna want to do it. You know, like if any kind of project that takes like more than an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Like
agree.
if you don't have that anxiety or like any kind of external motivation.
Yeah.
Chris, what makes you happy to work on? You graduated about last year, right? So it's been at least a year now.
Yeah, it's been a year. It's interesting. Like I started doing art when I was in school, and that made me realize that I like doing art like for money too. Like it's fun, and it's also like, wow, I get to make something for someone else and they'll actually use it. Like that's pretty cool. So yeah, I kind of like found like a hobby that turned into like a business name shortly afterwards. I think I forgot the rest of the question. Trailing off.
What about the rest of y'all? Have you found something that makes you I don't know, excited to wake up and work on things? Or maybe not. You don't have to like working. Sound like a weirdo.
I think that statement was just for me. Shidota hates free time. I love free time. I'll like watch 12 movies in a row.
Felt that.
Well,
Zoom in.
Yeah, no, but genuinely, like I'm like a very social person. Like I do like working with other people. That does genuinely bring me joy. So like the whole COVID thing hit me so hard. Like I think that's also why I don't have a ton of motivation. Like I was the type of person like me and Shloda would meet up and we'd study in silence, just like side by side. So to not even be able to do that was really, really hard. But I think I just like focused on my hobbies. Like I was always like a big reader, and like I've been getting into baking, so I like will like make bread or something, and I'll be like, oh, that's exciting. It's gonna make my day, and like I'll squeeze in work in between.
we've tried doing like the study in silence like through Discord, and it's just not the same.
It's just not.
Not the same.
No, it's not.
Because we also get distracted like with each other's music. I think that's also on us. We're not studying in silence. Let's be honest.
We were never studying in silence. For the record.
That's true. What about you guys, Mark, Tyler?
For me, free time, or what do I enjoy contributing to? I don't know. For me, I found definitely like it's hard. I think I go a little bit crazy if I have like too much free time. Like I need to get tired by something throughout the day to enjoy free time. Otherwise, I just kind of feel, I don't know, like unguided or just like there's not balance. But for me, I really enjoy working on things. And I graduated last May, so just about over a year ago. And I've been working full time since then. But for me, I enjoy working on things. I do enjoy working on some products more than others, particularly ones that I have a strong connection to the product or understanding. Like I think that's really rewarding from like a professional level. On a personal level, like a project that I really enjoy working on is definitely like the advice people tell you. Like if you're going to work on a project, choose a project or like a problem you want to solve to do it. That's one I would definitely say worked for me. I've been working on an app called Codelet, which I've been working on since January or December 2019. And I still work on it. It's still a passion project. It's actually a full company, and I run it with a couple of my college friends. So I still, we meet usually once a week. Sometimes we'll have a couple weeks where we don't meet on the phone, but it's kept going, and it's definitely a problem that I was passionate about, and I haven't let go of it. And that's fun.
You haven't told us what Codelet does.
Oh, yes. So Codelet is the mobile app that prepares you for your technical interviews. You can download it at codelet.app. And yeah, the problem that I wanted to solve for myself was just that, like, in short, programming interviews ask you like super domain questions, and lots of times there'll be a question, either the greedy solution that like the interviewer wants you to get that's going to decide if you get the offer or like how big your offer raise is, and it's super arbitrary. It's just this topic or this little trick you need to know. So Codelet's a mobile app that's just gives you these questions that you can go through in like a minute or two. It's just structured in such a way that you can just go through the questions just really quickly without having to write code.
Yeah, it's almost like multiple choice. And so for me, when I was interviewing, I graduated a few months ago and I do have like a full-time job lined up. So thankfully I'm not interviewing, but when I was interviewing for like internships, the biggest obstacle for me was honestly the nerves. Like I couldn't think straight. I couldn't, like, it was really bad. And I'd start stuttering and I'd forget everything I did. And I realized one thing that really helped me with my interview process was honestly getting it down to like muscle memory. Like there's only so many questions they can ask, and if you can all like memorize some of those, it really helps. And it's not even memorized like, oh, like this question is this, but it's a pattern. Like if you see something like this is what you expect.
There's some,
so I feel like
yeah.
that's like kind of what your app really helps with. For me at least, I kind of wish was there.
You hit it on the head better than I did. There's something that if you look around in the like one of the biggest pieces of advice is like mastering the patterns, not the questions, because like Shizota said, it's all these problems. And you wrote a great blog post on dev to.to that was really cool. I read that over. Yeah, there are these patterns, and if you Google like the 14 patterns of coding interviews, there are a bunch of blog posts in depth of the 14 patterns. It's like this toolbox of like, oh, you see this type of question, go for the sliding window technique. You see this type of question, go for the pointer technique. And they're just like, these like 10 or 15 techniques that are just going to cover a huge breadth of questions. Yeah, it's such a gatekeeping part of the industry, and I'm sure we could probably have a whole podcast talking just about that. But yeah, that's kind of what I do, and I like working on products that I personally motivated to solve a problem for myself. And for me, the other thing that I enjoy outside of work is just like helping other people, especially in CUNY, kind of demystify the interview process and getting your first job and an internship. Because I know for me, that's been a crazy process, and I'm sure we'll get to talk a little bit more about that in the rest of this conversation.
I feel like it's almost impossible to speak about graduation without talking about job search. I haven't interviewed like since COVID. But if you have, what was that like, and how is it different from entering pre-COVID?
I can talk a little bit about that. So maybe like 2 months after graduation, I started to get like scouted, which was like really, really dope. I'm not gonna lie.
Nice,
Shout out
yeah.
LinkedIn for like the SEO, because networking died kind of like in person at least. So kind of, I think more recruiters started to shoot their shot, you know, over LinkedIn. Like it's very much like, okay, like we've got this job and I'm not a scammer. This is real. Um, yeah, like definitely like having like that professional network already helped me out a lot. Like just having something on display, not even necessarily like I knew them personally, because I've never met some of these people, but they came out of nowhere and they were like, "Hey, like you look like you'd be a great fit. So let's start this interview." And the interview process was very quick too. I don't know if it's because like the company I was at, or like they were like in panic mode trying to find people or something. I think they were though, because I interviewed in like 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, and then they're like, yeah, you got the job. I'm like, okay, dope.
Congrats.
Now here I am.
That was a while ago.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
Awesome.
Congrats. Did you have interviews at? Did you have to like interview at a lot of companies, or was that like did you just have that one that worked out?
I had one really, I wouldn't say like a bad experience with Google, but like I interviewed at Google like immediately after I graduated, got to the final round, and then they were like, "Yo, you didn't perform consistently enough, so it's a no." And I was like super distraught, because I think that was like the first 2 weeks into like staying at home, and I'm just like, "Are you kidding me? Like, how am I going to be consistent when we're in a fucking part of my language? We're in a pandemic. Like, come on." But yeah, that happened. There was a bunch of other places that didn't really go through, and there's even some spots that I turned down because they didn't feel right, or like the compensation was just like way too low for what they were asking me to do or something. Um, but yeah, like overall, like the experience definitely shifted a lot. Like you don't get a chance to meet up with people, and it's very much like you're talking to someone behind the screen and you're trying to get to know someone from behind the screen, but like you've never met these people. Like and I talk to these guys like every day now. I've been working there for like 6 months and I still never met them, so it feels like I'd imagine I'm
Feel
talking
like
to
close,
them.
not close, but like friendly.
There's definitely a disconnection,
Yeah.
than when it's in person. I will say, like, I've never I've never really did any interviewing pre-COVID other than like interview prep with like friends, classmates, other students. But it feels kind of weird when you are like on a Zoom call, and sometimes they won't even have their camera on, and it's kind of just like you guys are talking, and like my camera will be on, and like I'm just not sure, like I can't get a read on their face. Sometimes it'll be just a little awkward at times. I don't know. It definitely feels. I feel like when I am like walking into like a work environment, my whole attitude is completely different as well. It's so hard for me to be at home and open my laptop and be like, okay, I'm ready for like an interview. Meanwhile, like maybe 30 minutes prior, I was just like laying down in bed, or doing something just completely irrelevant to being in like a professional work environment. So
I will say I do like being able to like read things, like like the basic questions where they're like, oh, tell me about yourself, tell me about a time you did this. Like I'll have like, not obviously like full out right now, but I'll have like bullet points that I want to make sure I hit. And I can do that via Zoom or via like video chatting, but I can't do that in person. Like I can't pull out like index cards like in a IRL interview.
Right.
Yeah,
That's true.
I found that
You
definitely
do get a little
plus
bit of an
too.
edge. Right.
Yeah.
I feel like my plus comes from like the being like being person to person, and kind of exchanging that energy, so you can kind of you can build off or you can pull back, based on like how the room is feeling, but when it's just like they're off on like a side camera, or sometimes like their camera will be on but you're coding like on a different tab, so you can't see what they're looking like, so it's hard to read, like am I on the right track, or am I performing the way
the
they
body
want me to perform?
language.
Do they want me to ask more questions? Do they want me to talk less, talk more? It's really hard to read those things.
Yeah. I agree. It's stressful. I know that there's a lot of like the news stories about Zoom fatigue that's gone around, but for me at least, I feel the need to like overcompensate for what you're talking about, Tyler, like the lack of, when you're with somebody in person, you build that like that reciprocal like communication of like trust of like how the conversation is going, and over a video call it's like so hard. Like I had an interview once where I like just had to work so hard to make this guy like crack a smile, just to like get it like something out of him. It's just in person that just it's just not the same. I've had experience with both. I was looking for jobs like right before the pandemic, so yeah, I hear you.
Mhm.
We were talking about this earlier, Mark, about how, well, Mark and Chris, I think we were both talking about it, about how, if you're interviewing during the last few stages, they'll fly you out, you'll get to see the campus, they'll give you a lunch. And now, like, none of that exists. Like, you're just on a Zoom call. So you have, like, all these horrible parts about interviewing, the nerves, the energy, just being tired, but you don't get any of the benefits, like really getting to see the campus and flying out to a new place. And that kind of sucks too.
Oh yeah, yo, super days suck. Can I say that? Like, I know, like, I think
Cool.
originally it wasn't as bad when you were, flown out and they give you lunch and you're doing that. But yo, now I'm like, I don't know if there's like a part of LinkedIn that's like, yo, pay me for the interview or something. But like, you have to spend the whole day,
It's terrible.
like five rounds, different people, different times, like, and you don't know what you're gonna get, and it's like a huge commitment for someone who's like, has other things to do or whatever. But like, you want to get the job, but like that one day to you might not mean anything to them, because it's not the same person interviewing like you for the over the course of the entire day. It's like a new person that you've got to like reacclimate to and reintroduce yourself and do the same. Like, yeah, I'm Christian Mentor. I did this. I've done here's everything I've done like in the last 3 years, 5 times. Like it gets super, super draining.
Have,
And I feel like a lot of companies forget that. You know, like
have
forget it, or I don't know. There's a better word for it though.
I think they don't really empathize with it just because most of them are only in for an hour. Or if they do, maybe just the system is so rigid that they don't change it, because they're also like the people who are working full time and are interviewing are also in these Zoom meetings and they have to put blocks. So I was interning at Facebook and Apple during quarantine, and it was the same thing. Like there were so many, because because we're not all together, and we could just like go to someone else's desk and ask a quick question or just catch up when you're like getting coffee. You had to set up a lot more Zoom meetings, and there was definitely a push towards kind of setting up blocks of time where no meetings are allowed, because they do get tired, and it is definitely real. But I guess that's just not really reflected into the interview process yet.
I
Do
think
you guys? Sorry, go ahead, Roma.
I think they're hoping that everything will open up. They
Yeah.
don't make any meaningful changes to the interview process. But I don't know if it's just realistic or not.
Have you guys found anything that helps you, I don't know, do better in the interviews, whether it's Zoom or in real life?
Doing better, and I guess, can I make the point that scheduling interviews over the course of like several days, like if you can ask like, hey, do I have to do every single one back to back? A lot of companies, I think the bigger companies are the ones who are doing that because I guess they don't have the time or they don't want to make the time. But that like preparing helps a lot. Just like, I don't know, like disconnecting from what you were doing before for a second and getting yourself into that like serious mode, or like letting people around your house know, like, hey, please don't, do something crazy in the background when I'm trying to get the job. Definitely helps.
So we got ask for what you need, which sometimes is going to be like to be able to space out these interviews so you're not burnt out for a whole week.
Yeah.
And then we also have just to prepare better and to make sure your space is, I guess, more professional or less interrupted.
I find that recording myself, like basically answering interview questions, like pre-interview questions, and then watching it back, just so I can have like a rehearsal as well as like see, how do I look while I'm like, while I'm answering these questions, because that will be like exactly what they see, and then maybe I'll make like a little bit of adjustments. And in fact, if I open like my photo booth and like show you how many files are there, it's just me just in front of a camera, sometimes just either giving my like tell me about yourself like pitch, my elevator pitch, or just answering multiple other questions that they could be asking, just to see what I look like.
Yeah, I feel like
How
I'm
about you
not
guys?
qualified to answer this question. My interviewing process is not gone great. I'm still interviewing. I'm still looking for a job. So, if I get better at it, I'll let you know. But right now I'm taking notes. I'm like mentally writing down what Chris and Tyler just said.
Yeah, for me, I never wrote code on index cards, but I started doing that when I really, really got desperate and I couldn't, I don't know, like I'd get so nervous I'd just stop, right? But that has helped me. And kind of similar to what you just said, Tyler, about practicing the interview questions, I'd have like the whole dialogues written on a Google Doc. So for every single interview, there would be like questions I anticipated. And before I go in, I'd just take a moment to answer them, just so they're subconsciously there for me. So like when the interview did come, there's something right there. Like it's not very far for me to get it. And something else I think a lot of people don't understand during interviews is half of the game is just being likable. Like they're not just seeing your technical skills. Like yes, coding matters, but they also want to see like what they want to work with you. And I think the biggest piece about that is just communication. So like starting it off right as like a normal conversation and being like, "Hi, how are you? And thank you so much for like this opportunity. I'm really excited." And just kind of feeling how they're feeling. Like if you see them pick up the pace, then you don't want to slow down and you don't want to slow them down. And if you see them trying to ask questions and are acting slow, then you want to kind of go on their pace. And another part of it is when you're like when they finally give you the technical question, don't just like jump straight into coding. I would say like make sure you talk about the question, you ask them about assumptions, you run through an example, and even at the moment if you're not sure what the question is, you can say something like you can say, "Oh, so like this looks like it might be a tree problem just because I've seen a similar problem." Or like you can look at it and say, um my initial like ideas for this is definitely like a graph traversal. I'm just not sure if it's a BFS or DFS. And the thing with like voicing these things out is that they're gonna say something and that will give you a hint as if they're going the right way and wrong way. I've heard of interviews where they just sit quiet the whole time, but I've luckily like never had that happen. Like they're almost always going to be guiding me and they're going to say, "Oh, that's a good example, but what do you think about this case?" And that for me is like, "Oh, that's not the right approach." And I've had this one interview where the first question was just like completely out of my league and I had never looked at this before and I was like and I like stuttered and I like tried putting it together and I was like, okay, so I was like I just completely was just honest. I was like, okay, I know this is this type of problem, but I've actually never done this before and that's on me. And then I just stopped. I was like, can this 45 minutes go quicker? Like I can't stare at this lady's face for another like 30 minutes, and the lady was just like, "That's fine, let's do this question." And she gave me a completely different question and I was like, okay, this I know, I've studied this is similar, like this is familiar. And I did the same things, like we were communicating and I got a full answer and we talked about it. And even though I messed up the first question, that led me to another interview. So that's like my biggest hint, like biggest tip if you're interviewing, like work on your communication skills. It's hard to code and talk to someone at the same time, but what they really want to see is your collaborative skills.
Yeah, I will say that for like previous interviews, I tend to just try to solve the problem as fast as possible and kind of sort of, or not as fast as possible, but I do hog most of the conversation, which is because I guess I always want to just show that I know what I know, show that I know what they're looking for. But now I'm trying to make it more of like I do want to try to make it more of like a collaborative thing. Maybe like ask like little like things about like, I don't know, like something, even things that don't even that matter that much. Like, oh, like what do you think I should name this variable? Or like just to make it a little bit more dialogue based. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Um, And in terms of like communication, I also find that trying to be, stand outish or relatable is also really good. Usually when like the conversation starting and they say like, how are you doing? Rather, I try to like not just say like good. I'm like, super excited to be here. Like, I try to like actually make it a little bit more interesting. Like I'll say like, maybe I'll actually like say something I did that day. I'll be like, oh, I like just came back from getting some ramen,
Yeah.
and if I'm lucky, they like ramen, or maybe I don't know. Hopefully they don't. I've never ran into anyone who said they didn't like ramen, but I don't know if I want to work somewhere with someone who doesn't like ramen.
Yeah,
But
I like that strategy.
yeah, but
That's
I
good.
found that that also like opens conversation, because at the end of the day, it's like as you said, Chisoda, like they're looking for people not only like that know like what they're doing, but also like they're actually they're like people you want to work with.
Yeah,
You know.
I agree with that a lot, and what Chizoda was saying too. I think my biggest tips for like from a high level interviewing is be prepared, whatever that means for you. So if that's going through questions or going through interviews or doing mock interviews with friends or recording yourself, one video that one I've never done with that I'm sure was really great. That's kind of a kind of foggy one, but I agree through the process, when you're being interviewed, you are being interviewed at the end of the day, and they're only going to hire somebody that they like what, all the good and all the bad that comes with that. And yeah, for me, like, like Tyler was saying, like I try to implore that that strategy too, like bring something in, like the break the like I try at least over Zoom. I think it's easier because the environment, if they're not going to talk a lot, like you can just kind of shape it. So I'll like break it, or I'll be like, oh, like it's really early or whatever. But for me, when it comes to the actual technical, I think every part of the interview has different tips, but I definitely agree with Shizoda. I've had a lot of experiences where I feel them out, and I sense if they want to lead or if they want me to lead. And if you have somebody where they want to lead, then let them lead, because they'll lead you to the right question and you'll go to the next interview. And that's happened to me many times. And then yeah, I think even if they're not leading, like I think the thing that's like a really easy tip is in Coda, I kind of broke it down, but what I just try to break down the interview process is like, do I understand the question? Let me rephrase it and get like the interviewer's affirmative confirming that I understand the question correctly, because that's really easy to do, and they'll either say no and they'll rephrase it or they'll say it again. Then the next thing I'll do is I'll talk out, or I'll actually write a document string or a comment of my approach that I'm thinking about, and then like a brute force approach. And then I'll say, okay, this is the kind of question, and then here are a couple approaches I'm thinking of, and then I'll iterate on it. And I'll say, okay, this is a brute force approach. Do you want me to implement it? Or, I think I have something else in mind. And then they'll tell me, I've had interviews are like, I don't know, do you think you should implement something else? And then I'll be, okay, I'll take that as a yes. And then I pick something else. Like, for example, I say, okay, like this problem, I think I could use a stack, and that's going to make my time really efficient, and my space is going to be, it'll be like 3 times n or n, and that I'm fine with that. So I'm going to go with this approach. Should I implement that? And then they'll be like, okay, that sounds like this is what they usually say. Like, yeah, okay, yeah, let's do that. Like, let me see you write that. I would say for me, at least, I never try to rush through actually getting to programming, because if you can get these dialogue aspects going and out, you can show off your communication skill that's going to always have to come up in pair programming. And another thing is, most questions have a follow-up that's way harder. So I'd rather show that I can communicate well, ask good follow-up questions, and get to the like this nice medium solution by the end of the 45 minutes or hour, then like code something out really quick and they're like, okay, now here's this new constraint. And I most of the time cannot do the new constraint really well. So that's my like technique for that. The other thing is, if you want to like play to your interviewer, I think if you really care about the company, do like sniff around their stack and ask them like a really thoughtful question, right? Like, how do you handle like, this problem? Like, I was interviewing a company and like, okay, I have a really good question to ask them. I know they use this technology. Let me ask them how they solve this problem to the backend engineer. Like, And like I asked him that, and he actually got he got animated. And I'm like, yes. I didn't get the job though, but yes.
I think we've been talking a lot about like interviews and like how to prep for them. But even getting the interview, I think is really hard. Like I was CAing for like intro to Java, and I told them like go to internship, like get an internship. For the summer, you guys are freshmen, so obviously you're not going to know a lot of coding, but that's fine. And every single one was like, but how do I get them? Like I'm applying and I'm hitting a void. Like I apply to these jobs and no one gets back to me. And obviously all you guys are so legit, so everyone gets back to you.
No,
But
I applied to 400 places and got no one back. I like your point, bring up. I just want to support that. I think as a new grad, and if you don't have an internship, the hardest thing is getting interviews. Like it's so damn hard. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
Literally anyone who's in CTP knows like the exact amount of jobs they applied to.
And Hunter.
I stopped tracking them after, but if you search for like "thank you for submitting"
Just
in your
cry.
email,
Oh
it's
God.
like 600 like hits.
Yeah.
Like I'd apply to like 5 or 10 jobs every day, and reply and be like, "Oh shit, I already applied here. Oh, sorry."
it's so disheartening though, to like open your email and it's like 10 rejections or like 20 rejections. And honestly, it made me stop applying for like a good week, 2 weeks. I was like, okay, I'm gonna take a break. I'm gonna talk to people who want to talk to me.
It's really bad when like I got my job, and I think like a month into me working there, I would get rejections from internships that I applied to. Like,
Yeah.
you think that you're not, it's like a you thing, and it's really not a you thing. It's like there's thousands of applicants, and then there's also like some companies just don't care to follow up.
Yeah.
Like I made it to the last round at like Bloomberg, I think, and they disappeared. And it wasn't I like followed up a third time. They were like, "Oh, sorry, it turns out we gave the position to someone else." Like, and I was like, "Oh, I could kind of figure that, but thanks."
I remember as a freshman, I was trying to get internships, and it was so hard. Like every time you're applying, most times they don't even know what Brooklyn College is. You're always in the other, like that's your school, your other. And after you take all this time to like fill out the applications, and I didn't even track them. Like at that point, I was a freshman, so I didn't even bother tracking them. But after spending hours interviewing, hours applying, you'd maybe get 5 or 6 interviews. And with those interviews, like there's a whole like build up where I'm nervous and I'm excited and then I'm confused and then I'm like dressed up and then I'm like practicing and I'm getting my friends to practice. And after that rejection and another rejection and another rejection, it's so hard not to be distraught or honestly just like take it personal. And I know for the absolute last interview I did as a freshman, like my eyes, I woke up like at 9 a.m. or whatever, and my eyes were actually like burning. I was like so over it because I was studying for the night before, and this was already like so many like rejections later, and this was a few weeks after summer started, so it was like 2 or 3 weeks after summer started, and there was like literally no hope left. And luckily that interview worked out, but I understand like how hard it is, and there's definitely a burnout process. And now like as like when I was interviewing as like a junior or a senior, I did space it out a bit more, and I made it so that it's more sustainable. Like you're not applying or interviewing for 1 week and then burn out for 3 weeks. And what really helped me with that was honestly just like sticking to my friends and making sure like my basic needs like sleep and eating was like working. What's something that has helped you guys like to avoid the emotional tolls of getting rejections and interviewing and not hearing back?
I kind of just, it's weird. I think I like disassociated from like the whole disappointment phase or whatever. Like if I didn't get the job, it's like whatever, it's your fault or a loss. Like, don't worry about it. But yeah, like I think it's just like once you do the interview, don't even like worry about like waiting for a response back. Maybe it's like privilege for me to say that, but at the end of the day, if they want you, they're gonna try to get you. And unfortunately, sometimes you're gonna have to deal with people who are gonna be not very helpful, and on the other hand, it's like you'll get people who legitimately want to see you succeed, so they'll like do what they can. It's really a mixed bag. Like there's really no like algorithm out there to be like, yeah, this is going to be a great interview, and yeah, I'm going to get this job. There's a lot of factors that go into it. So just like realizing that and not trying to, be like, oh crap, like I wasn't a good enough student 3 years ago, so that's why I didn't get the job. Like they weren't thinking about that, to be honest, most of the time. Maybe maybe it's something else, like you have bad person skills. I wouldn't think that usually happens. Um, but yeah, like just don't be as hard as yourself, like I said. It's the best thing, or best approach to like not getting depressed over rejections, because a lot of that is, it seems like if you read the email and you like read it as like this is so passive aggressive, like, oh, thanks for replying, like,
Aw.
like it's just like once after a while you just gotta be like, all right, whatever, like.
Yeah. It sucks. For me,
Oh,
go ahead.
no, go ahead, Mark.
Okay. I was just gonna validate with Chris. Yeah, it can get really annoying, and sometimes, at least for me, like I'll give different advice for a new grad versus someone who's trying out their first internship. I wasn't able to get mine. I had like, an internship at like an accounting company, which was like my like break, but that was my junior year. But even with that, I applied to like over like 400 places, and I think my number one thing that other people who had experience probably told me this, but I wasn't able to like hear it, was to manage your expectations. And I think like if there's advice I would give now is like, I was really lucky to get a group of people that I can normalize something with. Like, it's something similar to like, mental health. Like when people start talking about it, it like normalizes it, and you realize you're not the only one. And so once I started realizing that I'm not the only one who's getting like a 5% or below, or like a 1% interview rate when I apply to things, it definitely made me feel like, okay, like every time I read these rejection letters, it doesn't mean that like I'm terrible and broken, but that's what that's what like you read, and it's like, okay, why am I not getting an interview or hired? So yeah, I think that is my biggest piece of advice, is find a cohort. For me, like I was super lucky to get into and to be introduced. Actually, Chris introduced me to it, and outside of one of our classes, I don't know if you remember this, but you're like, oh yeah, the CTP, and you're like, oh, the last day was yesterday, and you're like, email them to see if you can apply, and I'm like, oh, okay, like I did it, and
I was like,
yeah, I know, it's so funny. But having that community, or like find your community, where of like a cohort of people. There are like Reddit forums, there are lots of Discord channels where it's like bracketed by year and what you're looking for. That helps a lot, because it's really brutal. And especially for me, like I didn't get my first internship until my junior year, and like I really had to like force to get that one, like pretty hard. So yeah, that's all I got.
I will say that like still get disappointed when I do get an interview. It's not like I'm completely unfazed by it, especially if it's like I don't know, a company that's like, your dream company. It's a company that you saw yourself working at, and like now they reject you. But I will say that some things that kind of east. Yeah, exactly. Oh, like you answer you answer the optional questions.
Yeah, all the options.
You went that hard during the application. And you still get the rejection, like it'll still hurt. But I find what kind of lessens the pain a little bit is, well, for one, applying to just as many places as like possible. I found that one of the reasons I was pretty distraught was like, I'd be like, wow, all the companies I applied for all rejected me, like all of them, and then it's like, how many companies do you apply for? And it's like, oh, I only applied to like 20, which like is a lot, but there's, I don't know, I found that once I started applying to more, and then I started getting a little bit more rejections, especially if there were companies that like, I just heard of and I hit apply, like right then and there. It definitely kind of, you build this sort of tolerance to kind of just see the rejection and keep on moving forward. I will say that also, like, it is good to kind of sometimes, if you do see like a pattern maybe, then perhaps like there are some things you could maybe brush up on. I would say like definitely going back to like what we're talking about in CTP, which I learned like the importance of always like building a resume, you know, and always like making sure your resume is like in tip-top shape, because that is literally like when you apply to these companies, especially if you don't know anyone there, they're going everything they know about you off of this piece of paper that they sometimes will only look at for 10 seconds or less, and sometimes they don't even look at all, and it's just a computer that like scans through them. So I think definitely like keeping resume in mind, and making sure. I found that when you're doing your resume, it's good to just change some words around so that it lines up a little bit more with like what the not the application. Yeah, what the position says. Like it lists, it's like, oh, like these technologies, and like I'll even like almost not copy and paste word for word like exactly what they want, but like kind of try to fit in as many of like those keywords exactly that are on that position, and just try to sprinkle it around my resume, so that like at least like if they read the position and they read like my resume, it's like, okay, like this sounds like the person we're looking for, and at least like that'll get you one foot in the door. So
there are tools. I know one free one that you can use over and over is called Job Scan, and they only let you do like one free one. But if you clear your cookies, you can keep going. This one fixed that.
I did not know that. I've been paying for it.
Have you really?
What's that?
What about you, Shinoda?
Oh, what keeps me going? Finding community is definitely one of them, and friendships. Friendships for sure. Like after I tried to, I forgot where I heard this, but like building a habit is only really possible when you don't hate the task, right? So if you're like constantly traumatized by rejections or interview processes, like you're not gonna be able to keep it. So towards the end, I started just like incorporating like bubble tea dates with my friends, or like doing interview prep with like on the whiteboard in the computer science club room, and just kind of normalizing it. So one, like I'm not like always terrified of interviews, and two, it is something I look forward to. So no matter whether I like bombed the interview or I feel like I did really good, it was always at least like something to look forward to, which was always like a bubble tea or a park date or whatever, like biking, longboarding. Those things really helped. And I kind of want to speak on cohorts. CUNY Tech Prep CTP is a year-long program that does both professional and technical development. I love CUNY Tech Prep, and a lot of us here, Tyler, Mark, Christian, we're also part of CTP, and I think we can all kind of speak to that. And they're one of the few programs I think that make it easier for you to build your network. Like once I was in CUNY Tech Prep, it was always like constantly talking about interviews. There were places where I can meet people who are working at Facebook and Squarespace and all these other companies. For us, like for Brooklyn College, we don't have a whole lot of recruiters on campus. We don't have a whole lot of alums. And I remember, so now I've worked at Facebook and Apple and JP Morgan and Teachers Pay Teachers and Brooklyn Bark. Like I worked at enough companies where I'm like, oh, like I take it for granted. Like, but when I was a freshman, if somebody even said like you'd get into one of those companies, it was like it's like a flattery, it's just something I take for granted, because you never saw anyone from Facebook on our campus, or Google would come like once a year. And same thing with like all these other companies besides JP Morgan, which was absolutely amazing, and Con Edison. I don't think we saw a whole lot of, and Bloomberg. We didn't see a whole lot of big companies there. I'm sorry?
They came for like the business kids mostly.
Yeah, because
like
our business school.
Yeah.
Our business school is pretty. They're very active. Like they have a student SLC, Student Leadership Council, which was I also was a part of it, and they really like work with the alumni to get people on campus. So that's where a lot of those connections came from. But for Brooklyn College, there's really not that many recruiters. So if you never see the recruiters and you never hear any of your friends talking about Facebook and Apple and Google, like you just don't think it's possible. And I think like going into these different things. So CTP, CUNY Tech Prep, rewriting the code. There used to be Whitney.
Yeah, Whitney is called Breakthrough Tech now, I think. Yeah. Oh.
Whitney got changed?
Yeah, they call themselves Breakthrough Tech now. But they still like do it. But it's not just women anymore. Now it's they're like all underrepresented minorities. So my cousin, he's not a girl, right? But he was able to get a internship through Breakthrough Tech, which was previously.
It's probably to be more inclusive of like, you know, people who aren't conforming to like gender identities and whatnot.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
That's
but
awesome.
Whitney was great. I know I didn't do CTP with you guys, but I did Whitney for like I was in their spring cohort, and it was really nice.
It was actually really dope.
Everything good?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, CTP was great. I met some guys from Pixar actually. I got offered a job from them, but like the job just wasn't something I wanted to be doing anymore. Like by the time I like started getting the offer. But yeah, no, like it definitely like, exposes you to that professional network. I think the thing is with networking, it's really easy to get starstruck and think like, wow, you work for this big company that I've heard. Like you're probably amazing, but at the end of the day, it's another job. You know,
Yeah.
like, these are regular people who work for like regular companies. So like if there's any way that you can like try to get to know someone, like I don't know, like slide in a recruiter's DM on LinkedIn. You've already heard it all, but like, you know, just like get to know someone better and they can tell you a little bit more about like how to get there. And it definitely helps you out when people help you, you know.
Yeah,
I think
for sure.
the cool thing with New York City is that there's a really active tech scene, and there's so many things you can explore and get to know. And there's like another way of like finding your cohort and finding people to be like excited about tech, and honestly not letting it like burn you out or honestly start resenting it. I feel like at one point I was working so hard in tech and focused so hard in like these stupid metrics that I started like resenting tech. I was like, why am I coding things I don't care about? So yeah, I think like to avoid burnout and to still like continue to do it, you should like make it fun for yourself.
Yeah.
Did you want to say something, Mark?
Oh no, I was just agreeing.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to change directions a little bit and talk about future plans or really like the different routes we're all starting. I know Roma, for you, you were considering doing a PhD and doing a more education route. Mark, you're already doing startup, and Chris, I think you're doing like a million things. But the thing that always comes to my head is the clothing line you're working on. How is that going for y'all? What do you exactly do? Where do you hope to see it go?
Who wants to go first? Is it
You can go first.
Wait, is it really me? Because
Go ahead, Chris.
sure, why
Yeah,
not?
go for it.
I mean, in terms of what I'm doing, like, I've kind of a lot of running a business kind of comes with like figuring out what exactly you need to do in order to like make it work. And for making a clothing brand, it's been really interesting because there's a lot of problems that you wouldn't really think about unless you started selling things online. Um, and a lot of my first year spent trying to figure that out. Which way to see, you know, AC's like mad loud because it's hot as hell. But we're back. Anyway, yeah, it was hard at first to like figure out like the supply chain, figuring out like who I wanted to sell to, like a target audience. And then there's other things like trying to add more people to the business, or like trying to get partners, or trying to have like someone to help me out. But it's been a really fun time, you know, like being able to like make decisions for myself and like actually do things and see people wear the stuff that I'm drawing or something like that. Like it's pretty cool. Yeah, next steps. I want to do bigger stuff. I want to do like more stuff. I did a pop-up shop that was really cool. I want to do more.
Yeah, it was
Canal
fun.
Street.
Yeah, Roma came by. Shouts out to her. I was mad.
I got so many compliments on your shirt, so shout out to you for making me look good.
Okay, you gotta plug the company.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
no, NYC. I forgot. I always do.
Null.nyc.
Yeah.
Yeah, you recently did a Kirby shirt that was like AR or it was augmented, right?
Yeah, no, there was like
That was cool.
there was a bunch of people like, wow, it's the future. It's the future. Like, that was really dope. You know, like combining the whole tech background with like more of the artsy stuff is always like something I've been like really for.
I just love the whole concept, like null as a concept. Like I had to explain it to my cousin. She was like, what is null? Like, what does that mean? 'Cause she saw me wearing the shirt. And I was like, oh, well, like technically, I guess, like a null set, but it's also like, it's mostly like a CS thing. And she was like, oh, okay.
Nah, definitely. A lot of people were confused. Like, whenever this is the marketing slogan, um, it's assigned no value. Whenever you make something or you sell something, you're giving it a value. So it's kind of like irony in that
Mhm.
sense. Like, it's called null. It technically means it's assigned nothing, but you're gonna pay money for it. But after a
That's
while, like,
poetic.
you set your own
Wow.
value for it. You know? You get to like assign
I
it.
actually really like that.
Yeah. It's like a
You
variable.
made something from nothing.
Yeah.
Or you
Very
assigned it a value, assigned something that had no value.
Yeah.
How does it feel to, I guess, like a balance, like both, art and clothing line, as well as like, sort of your tech life?
Right. You still work as a
I
software
feel like,
engineer.
Yeah, it's tough. The
I
pain.
feel like on paper, these two things kind of look a little bit of like opposites. One is more like artsy and one is more technical, So I don't know. How does that feel?
I mean, honestly, it's very much it is really hard to like juggle stuff when you don't have time. Because it's a job. Like, software engineering it's a job. Like, it's a career, but it's also like, it's 9 hours or 8 hours out of my day. I'm not gonna try to work after work, like I don't get paid overtime. So like that's when it's like time for me to lock in and do something that I enjoy, and that's when I find time to like I'll give myself projects. Like I have like a whiteboard of like designs that I want to flesh out or something like every day, or like I'll revisit something else or work on like a marketing rollout for something, like I'll just divvy up my time. And I know like once I clock out of work, I am very, very good at like no longer doing work. Once it's like not time to do work
Boundary.
anymore,
Work-life balance is on
yeah,
point.
someone hits me up on Slack at 6 p.m. Like, yeah, nope. Yeah, you'll hear back from me in the morning. But yeah, like there's not much overlap. Like doing my regular work isn't gonna train me for what I'm doing like outside of work. But that's fine too. Like I find ways to, make it work. If that makes sense.
Thanks for coming. If you're so like, I forgot how busy you are.
Sure.
Real.
Yeah, it's kind of hard. I'm not gonna lie, but we here.
Mhm. Okay, do you want to go now, Mark? Maybe.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Actually, I had a question for Chris. How do you, how do you balance, like, how do you set those boundaries? Because I think that's something that I struggle with. Like, how do you, because you've got more on your plate than somebody normal full time. How do you manage that? Like, does your work ever say no? Like, we need more of you this week, or like, how do you like deal when that's not super smooth, or has it always been easy to set those boundaries?
I cry.
I cry.
Seriously, like there was a time. So I work for a music startup. Concerts are back, and we were very much like crunching out everything to get things ready for concerts being open and people trying to book, and we're working on like the platform to actually let people purchase the tickets. So that kind of has to be done. Um, but it's very much like, all right, ask for help when you need it, and here's something that I'm not proud of doing, and I probably shouldn't have done. Like I did actually do some overtime, but it wasn't like paid. It was like, oh crap, like this needs to be finished before like next week Tuesday. It's Thursday, and like there's gonna be like I don't know 5 more files that I have to like touch and test and write tests for, and yeah, like getting that help definitely helps. But like I like just did some late night, like, ooh, let me try to knock this out because I don't want to like, mess up my like productivity or something, or mess up like the company and push us back, and the investors get pissed off, and then they're like, hey, who's responsible for that? um, but how do I like? Yeah, like I think it's very much like I balance it when I need to, but sometimes when I need to like tone down the business stuff or like take a break from the business stuff, I try to, like,
Yeah.
you know.
Cool. Yeah. I'm interested to hear about that. Thanks for kind of sharing about that. Yeah, for me, I'll go next. For me, what was the question? Like where we're going or where we're at?
Yeah, so explain what you actually do and I guess like where you hope to see it grow the next few years.
Yeah, for sure. So, currently I'm a full stack engineer at Last Mile Retail. So I work at that company. We're a pretty small company, about 5 full-time engineers and a couple extra hands on the side. I I get to work on lots of cool projects over there, and I'm sure I could talk a lot about that work. But from kind of a high level, I think that where I want to be going. Oh, there was a question, so we can switch to that topic in a couple minutes if we want to. But for me, from a high level, yeah, like I'm working at Last Mile Retail. I think I've been at the company about a year and a half, and the direction of where I'm going and where I want to go is currently I'm really interested in like continuing to see through my startup, but really what I've gotten to learn over the past year is the kind of work that I find rewarding and that I don't, and I've been pushing to move on to the kind of environments that I want to explore professionally. So for me, actually, I'm going to be taking a new job in starting late next month at a company called Claire. And I'm really excited to work there because I get to work on a user-facing application that's in React Native,
Right.
and I think that's where I'm at right now. It's hard for me, and it's been the part and where I come to this conversation looking for like guidance and like community is like I think I came into my career, and it's natural to come into the career during COVID or right post COVID, where there's easily like a very survivalistic nature in work. And this year I just realized how toxic and how hard it could be, where it's just like work, like work 60 hours this week, or we need these things done. And it's really easy to like let go of your mental or physical health or the things that you like really care about. Um and that's, I think, a really hard thing to navigate, especially in tech, where people, a lot of times it's there are a lot of things to get distracted by. It's money, names, things like that. And so my next road on the journey is just hopefully bringing and creating a network of people that are kind of mindful about these things, and being able to contribute to an app and be part of a company that is like trying to solve these cultural problems too. Yeah, and I want to see Codelet to success. I'm really excited about that, and I'm lucky to have gone into CTP, get into these other programs to get me into this accelerator and to start this company and to work on it. Like, I think I'm super stoked and lucky to have these opportunities, and I'm excited for the future. I'm just missing people personally.
And your app is going public soon, isn't it? Codelet.
Yeah. So Codelet right now, was just finishing up some of the user settings, but goal is to make it public release in the next couple weeks. So you probably see some posts on LinkedIn about that. Just gonna be, I'm adding some more questions, and I have a lot of questions I'm gonna add, and we'll get it out there in public. And I'm just gonna keep on working on that. It's still 3 of us. We all have full-time jobs, but we still work on it as a passion project. And I think for me, Last Mile was like a not super publicly like venture funded company, and now Claire that I'm joining, it's like a different type of startup, and I think I've really enjoyed going from more of like a private, not as publicly venture funded startup, and learning so much and working with the best people and having the best experience with them, to moving to a company that's a little more forward facing. Claire just got like more publicly funded and has like a lot more like quicker traction and growth and is user facing. And I'm really interested in the first 2 to 5 years of my career, seeing how that goes and how it transitions a little bit to my startup, but really just to practice what I'm learning on my own startup, and then like flower into the world. Like eventually, I think the thing that I'm looking for is stability in a place where I can work and be able to talk to my friends like I am now, and to enjoy the thing that we're working 40 or 50 hours for, which is life.
I actually have so many
Yeah.
more questions for Mark just to elaborate on, but someone asked us a question.
Sure. Yeah.
They said, for those who got more than one offer, or an offer and an alternate plan, how did you decide between them? I don't know. Yeah.
Turn off my AC again because it's hot as shit.
It is so hot. I am dying.
I stepped out my room.
Jeez.
Crazy. But yeah, nah. When you get multiple offers, definitely like you want them to know that there's other people who are going to give you something that they're not going to give you. So like if there's a company you really want to work for and they're just like not paying enough or something, or maybe they're not giving you enough vacation days, or maybe they're not giving you like enough free stuff, you can always just be like, yo, actually, I'm not gonna work for you unless you like unless you do this. And I think it's like when you're first looking for that very first job, it's very easy to get stuck in that. Oh my god, they gave me a job. I'm so hyped. Like, wow,
Yes.
thank you, bless you. Oh my god, like, and like, it's not about that. It's like it's their privilege to have you as like a person, like giving them money. Like, like the guys that own the company don't know what they're doing when it comes to that job. That's why they're trying to hire you. So it's very much like you gotta realize that you're the commodity at that point, like in a good way. Like you are the prize. Yeah.
I'll put that on the t-shirt. You'll own the
Yeah. Definitely. Oh, put on a t-shirt, yo.
A third job for Chris.
Maybe a sticker or something, but definitely realize that first, and then go from like, all right, does this pay me enough? Do I like these guys more? Are they like, where am I going to be able to go after I work here? Because once you work for a company and you get onboarded and they give you like that free laptop, and you're just like, damn, like jumping around at different companies is going to be probably really annoying. So it's like, all right, am I going to enjoy my next 6 months like working for these guys? Like you got to think about stuff like that. But definitely, I think the most important thing is like what it's going to do for you, and like what is it going to give you access to. Like if I work for a company, I'm going to be like, okay, clearly I'm not going to spend my next 10, 15 years here. Like I don't think so. Like I think it's a little bit different for our generation. Like and it's really funny because like everyone who I work for is like way older than me. Like they've got families, so like I guess they don't even want to like move on because it's like you find your job and that's it, you're staying there. But like you want to look at it in the long term, like where am I going to go after this? What am I going to be able to do after this? Like who's going to be looking at my resume after this? Who knows the people at my company? So like something really like sneaky that I am doing right now, like I think I eventually want to work for Spotify, and the company I work for now is like a bunch of old Spotify heads. So it's like I might as well like work here if I'm trying to get there, like all those times that they
Yeah.
and now I'm like I work for the company that like made your algorithm cough.
You'll get there.
Yeah.
And once you do, can you make them put the lyrics in the song?
So
like in the app, I think you can't. It's probably because of patents. Like you can't.
Maybe.
You can't copy like functionality from other apps. Like Apple Music probably has that like down pat.
So for me on this question, I think this one is somewhat fresh in my mind. I think what Chris was saying is like super true. especially like, you know, looking at like know your worth and what are you going to get from the experience, you know. And like, yeah, like the tenure in software engineering is like 2 years, like that's the average tenure. For me recently, like with this job, there were a couple good blog posts. There's one, is it by Carta? It's by one of these blog posts, but essentially you're, if you have an offer or an alternate plan, right, what they say is, how do you decide between them? So for me, and the things, it's going to be different for everybody else, but I would say is have, like, know what you want, right? Some people want like, and what you want should not be like, oh, I want like $1 million a year. Like, know what you want from like a realistic and need perspective, right? What are your financial goals, right? Sit down and do, okay, my goal is to save this amount a month, and these are my expenses, X, Y, and Z. And then that's how you should build, like, this is my salary goal. Besides for that, there's so many other things, like Chris was saying, that are super important in terms of like this, even though you might not be here for like 5 years, it's where you're going to be for the next 6 months. And those other things matter so much, like benefits, work-life balance. Like that's one that I like really, I really asked the company that I'm going to be joining now, like a lot of questions about. And yeah, like that's how I decided between the offers, were those things. The product is too, like at the end of the day, that's the product you're going to be working on. I don't see, you know, a question of like, I don't see that your question's asking like, oh, how do you get a better offer? But there's this one concept, and there are a couple of blog posts about your best next alternative, and if you have one, you want to be vocal about it, kind of what Chris was saying. So if you already have a job and you really love your job, like I really did, and I do love my current job, my current company, to be very vocal about that. Like, you know, in order for, like, I'm passively looking, in order for it to make sense, like this is my salary, or like, oh, like I really am looking for this type of team and the right fit. Those sorts of things are going to make it easier for you to decide, and it's also going to show the company that they have to treat you seriously, right? They're not just going to like try to like lowball you or throw you an offer or not really give you a good interview experience. Yeah, that's all I got.
Yeah, there's a few things I want to echo there. The first one is like, yeah, negotiate your pay. And if they can't negotiate the pay, you have vacation days, you have these other swag, these other benefits. Like, I don't know, like there's a lot of different packages that comes with an offer. So, but I don't think this question was specifically about negotiation. How do you decide between them? Yeah. I mean, for me, a big part is definitely pay, just because like it's not just me like being rich or whatever. Like I have a whole family to support, and anyone who is a I think anyone who's an immigrant, honestly, like anyone who came with their parents, there's definitely a need to support them. So for me, like the biggest one is pay. And then the second one is I can't be miserable at the job. Like if I can't, like no amount of money will be worth it if I'm depressed and I hate coding again. Like so another big part is really just my team. These are the people I'm going to be working with. These are the people that are going to review my code. These are the people that are going to be answering my questions. If they're people that will be condescending, or if they're people that will do like these passive aggressive comments, if these people don't have a good culture of, you know, respecting boundaries, or like not overstepping on weekends and past 6 p.m., it would be very hard for me to do it. So pay is a really big part of it, but I've definitely taken pay cuts for better interview processes. Like for one was Amazon Amazon was paying the most, and I ended up choosing Facebook and Apple because my Apple manager was amazing, and I couldn't take the risk of Amazon and just not knowing where it was going to be, because I already felt like really in a good place with my manager. And the same thing with Facebook, like the recruiter was so good. Like I just felt like, and they gave me a really cool mission at the time, which COVID like changed the plan. But for me, it's pay. It's a balance of pay and team and culture. Like you can't be miserable for the next 6 years or 6 months or 2 years. It's just not going to be worth it.
How do you figure out, I know it's something that I struggled with, but do you have any tips on like how do you like know your worth, right? I know like Chris mentioned in the beginning, but like for you too, like I know I found a lot of tools on it, but I'm interested to hear like, you know, how do you balance those things? Like,
Yeah, I usually start, and I'm curious to hear other people's opinions, but I usually start by looking at the requirements and seeing where it goes for my location, so New York City, and starting there. If I have any other like offers to leverage, and depending on, I mean, for internship offers, which is all I've really done, I got two full-time offers, but for internship offers, there's only so much you can leverage and so much you can like argue for or negotiate for. So yeah, I usually just do my research, and if it meets the minimum, like I'm not too picky. I'll just be like, this is the highest offer I have. I'll take it. Oh, and I'll usually ask up front, like, is this negotiable? And if they say no, and I'm like, okay, fine, I'll sign. That's it. It's probably not the best technique, but that's, if it meets the minimum, like there's no reason for me to be asking them more. Kind of like what you were saying, Mark, like outlining my needs, how much what's the minimum willing to accept, and then if, and it's just like balancing, am I going to struggle a little more in interview for a better offer, or am I going to just take this and start earning money like quicker, earlier?
yeah. So I have advice more on that specifically. I'll try to keep it short. In regards to internships, I don't have as great advice, but the way I think it is worth thinking of an internship as somewhat of an investment, but free work is not cool. So I'm not saying that, but you know, lots of times internships they're not super negotiable, but it's a good idea to ask like, what if I get a return offer, like what's the range I'm going to be in. But for full time, because I recently did a lot of interviewing to get to this new job, yeah, I think just if you are going to have a number, there's this whole entire thing of like showing your card, or the other hand, the YouTuber Mayoko, I think her name is, right? She did a talk at Brooklyn College. She has a really good 2-part video with one of the people who works at Levels at FYI. Levels at FYI is a great database and website that has salary data.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard in salary data in general, and I'm sure we can have a whole conversation about this, because you go to Level FYI, the salaries are over 30% higher than if you go on Glassdoor versus if you go to like salaries.com or whatever. But the hard rules that I got from all these opportunities and the things that I looked up was, you have two strategies. One is, you know, your minimum, and if they ask you, you tell them that. If they offer it to you, you basically have to take it, because you're saying, this is what I want, and if you tell me what you want, and I'm going to give it to you, you should take it or reject it. So you kind of lose your leverage there. But the other strategy is to push on asking what the range is for the role, and if they keep on pushing you, just say, oh, it's too early right now, and then eventually they'll give you a range. And from larger companies, especially like Fangs or even big ones, the range is generally anywhere from like 20 to like 80K, and so it really can vary. So there's like a whole like philosophy on this stuff, and I'm happy to, if anyone has any questions, I can send you the resources that I came across, so feel free to reach out.
You should throw them in the chat.
Okay, I'll try to find them.
I was gonna say.
Maybe
That'd be
after,
so great.
like, send a follow-up email or something. So you don't
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
I don't think there's any more questions. I'm not sure about the next episode, so we're just gonna breeze past that question. But I don't think there's any other questions. So we could go back. I had so many questions for Mark, like just me personally, like just about the startup experience. Everyone I know talks about like making a startup, but you have actually done it. So if you don't mind, like,
Yeah.
the conception to actually doing it, so like where you guys are now.
Yeah, for sure. So Codelet for me really simply came out of the frustration of preparing, and then and then when I do have an interview, just having a completely different like question asked to me, and like not knowing like this strategy. So for me, inception came from frustration, and my own problem. I from the end of the fall semester into spring I was gonna have time off, and I was like, I feel like my skills with CTP are pretty strong. This is basically at the midway point where we get to either continue our first project or start another one. So I decided for my month off, I'm going to just make this app. Like, I know React. Let me start with React Native. And so I told my friend who actually met in CTP, I was like, hey, like I'm gonna make this app over this winter, and I want to like bring it to market, and I'm gonna commit to it. And I'm like, do you want to like work on it with me? And he's like, yeah, we should apply to, like you should apply to this. There's something called the CUNY Accelerator. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So I learned about this program, the CUNY Accelerator, which is basically an 8-week program that runs mostly through the semester, where every week you go in and you have a talk and sessions on really what it's like to like make a startup, like things like valuation, and your product, your pitch, things like that. And so I did the application for that, and at that point I already had like an MVP lined out for the product, and I was accepted in. So that's where the inception came from. And basically I just kept on working on it. I think for me, my strategy was, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get a job when I graduate. So I better have something and build kind of like this network of people that are going to keep me accountable and something that I'll work on. And if I don't have a job out of college, like I'll have my own company to work on, and I'll just keep doing that until I get a job. Luckily, I did end up getting an internship that I turned into a job, and I could talk more about that now or a different time. But that's kind of how it started. We ended up winning one of the sections won like $100 that I think I never got from CUNY. But yeah, so
Oh my god, CUNY.
for me, it was really cool. I think, I just feel super lucky to have tripped and fallen into these opportunities within CUNY. And for Codelit, that was just a project that I was really passionate about. And, we got some people like stopped working on it, and then I got more people to work on it. And it's still me, one of the original other co-founders, and one of my like best friends from college who work on it when we can. It's been really awesome because you get to see all the life cycles and what it takes to create a company. I think it could be like really intimidating and all that, but for me with Codelit, it came from, I have a product that I want to bring to market, and then I just need to like figure out what are the requirements to get there. And it can be like super confusing, but like kind of what you're saying, at a full-time job, there's a certain point where you start working where you realize like everybody's just winging it. And so, yeah, I've just been winging it and figuring it out as I go along. You have to incorporate at some point, you figure out a structure. And yeah, I think the most rewarding part for me has been, it's just been an excuse to keep in touch with all my computer science friends, community. And I like building it. I love building it. I want to bring it to market because I actually want to help people with it. Like, I hope it's useful, and if it's not, then I'll use it.
No, it is useful.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know if there's anything specific, like any part of the process that I can like demystify or kind of explain. I'm happy to talk about.
I wanted to run it back to what you mentioned about the intimidation. I feel like there are a lot of people who have like great ideas, but either they don't know how, or they're, not sure, or they're scared to take like the first step. And did you ever deal with that? And how did you get over it? Are you still going through it sometimes even?
I think for me was coming down with a strategy. I am kind of practical, so a lot of like the startup gurus that came to talk at the accelerator, they're like, it's all or nothing. You can't have a job and work on your startup. And I think that's wrong. I think sometimes you have the privilege that you can do that. Maybe you work for 10 years and you save up a lot of money and you can do that, but like I need to graduate. Like I have to like get a job, and people have to support, they want to support their families. They have things to do. So for me, the barrier was, I tried to take myself out of the high pressure environments and just break it down into like super small steps and see, okay, what's the next thing that I actually need to do, right? There are lots of people like, oh, you need to do this full time. like 60 hours a week to like give everything, give your soul to your startup. And I just don't subscribe to that. I think, you know, you have a good idea or you have a bad idea, you know, the reality is, yeah, most startups fail, right? And I embrace that. Like I embrace Codelit will probably fail and I won't make money off of it. And like, that's not necessarily my goal. And I think for me, that preface and that like attitude has removed like the stress, right? Like it's not, I'm not taking out a bunch of loans. I haven't like promised investors like all these things for money, and it lets me still love what I do, which I love coding. I love solving this problem. And that's been the way that I've been able to take it. Otherwise it can be super stressful. I think there's a super toxic like culture around it. And even in the companies that I've worked in, it's like, oh, you know, we got to get this product out and blah, blah, blah. It's a startup culture. And it's like, no, like, I don't like that.
I really like that. I
That's
really like the
that's
the thought
amazing.
of you know, you have like, you know, beliefs and goals within the company, but you're not like setting this crazy standard. Like this is gonna be like a company that's gonna,
No.
you know, and I feel like I like the idea that it takes less pressure off of you, because I think that reflects more on, I don't know, your performance, and like
It's
it makes you want to work more in it.
Yeah, it's hard because you can argue like that's not sustainable for a business. And I agree, right? It's hard, right? I think people who are able to create startups, it's either really detrimental to like your health and your stress, and I get it. Some people are willing to do that. Um or, you know, you just kind of do it because you care about the problem you want to solve and you're interested to see what goes into it. And that's where I'm at, you know. I think people like that's the culture that I want to bring more to startups, because you should be encouraged that you can explore your idea and get it out there, because it's not all or nothing. Like, you know, yeah. And it's really up to you, you know, like obviously there are arguments about the first person to market
Right.
is not always the one who's going to be successful. Like there are all these like deep, deep like beliefs and thoughts that are really like true, but I'm lucky enough to be in computer science where I can get a good full-time job and be able to like have a career path where I don't feel like this is what I need to do. And I'm lucky for that. You know, I don't think everybody could say that.
I think my favorite aspect of your mentality in like for startups is that it's so sustainable. Like you're not gonna be working so hard where you burn out, and you can still, of course, like not take those huge financial risks going in, and you're still enjoying it. Like that sounds so realistic, so sustainable, and really positive.
And
Yeah,
like super accessible. Yeah.
thanks. I would say I don't think it's like these are like how I want to handle things. I think even when you do it, like
Mm-hmm.
it's been hard, and I've learned some really hard lessons because of this. You know, I mean, I never worked on it during work time or anything, but if you are starting your own startup and you're working on it in your free time, if you let it take too much of your free time, then you kind of start to burn out just on life in general, right? If I was like taking my whole Sunday and like working on Codelit, and it's like, you know, that's not sustainable. So you have to figure out what's sustainable for you. And you know, uh yeah, I think, you know, a software engineer that's running a startup on the side is different than like a business person who's running a startup on the side, or like, you know, a generic entrepreneur.
I think startup is something that we all have played with in our mind. And I know, so for instance, Tyler, Roma, and I were part of the computer science club eBoard last year, and we definitely treated it like a startup. And I think that's kind of like partly because we all eventually one day, you know, if the, I mean, for me personally, if it happens, it happens. But the whole idea was the computer science club has a client base. You know, we have a demographic we're going towards, we have services we provide, and we have these goals. And it just felt so good to like work on a mission you care about. And I think that's one of the things I would love to do for my startup too. Like anyone can have ideas, but can you stay committed to the idea? And can you work with it and finding the right people and just like doing it in a way where you're not gonna, I don't know, burn out, I guess. That's always my biggest thing. Like, am I gonna start hating my life? But yeah, startups is awesome. Like that's really awesome that you just jumped into it. I think it's amazing.
Yeah, thanks. I just kind of, like I said, just luck kind of just randomly fell upon it.
I will say, for as much, as we talk about CUNY and like sometimes there's not as many resources as we'd like, like they do have awesome stuff like the CUNY Accelerator, CTP, Breakthrough Tech, like previously known as Whitney, was also a CUNY program. Like there's so many tiny things. Like people are making it better. We've been trying to make it better.
Yeah. Oh my God. I think our faculty and the people, I mean, we work with everyone on Brooklyn College like so closely, and I think the faculty is absolutely amazing for us, at least for me personally. And I also feel like we graduate with as minimal debt as possible in New York City.
Yeah.
Like that is a huge step in the right direction. And I don't know, everyone in CUNY is just so cool in my opinion. I mean, not that other schools aren't cool, they're just not as cool.
No, we're definitely cooler. I'll say it.
Coolest. Okay, I think this is a great note to end on. Thank you all again for showing up here, and I'm excited for next episode, whenever that happens. Probably next month. I'd love to do this monthly, but I start full time, and I have no idea what like obligations or NDAs or however that's gonna work out. But thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Shazada.
Yeah.
Yep.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for pleasure being on here.
Thanks. Sorry about my
Talking to you guys.
It keeps me cool.
Bye.